An injury to Dak Prescott has already altered the NFC East race. My name is Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Tuesday, September 13th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback for us today is Cooper Rush because Dak Prescott is hurt. A miserable summer for the Cowboys has gotten exponentially worse. Behind perhaps the worst pass protection of his life, Dak Prescott had a terrible showing against the Buccaneers on Sunday night before getting hurt. He went 14-29 for 134 yards with an interception in the Cowboys' non-competitive Week 1 loss. Oh boy, here come the dogs. But an injury suffered when edge Shaq Barrett hit Prescott's throwing hand on a follow-through might be a blow the Cowboys can't overcome. For NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, Prescott could return in 4 to 6 weeks following thumb surgery. The procedure was considered a success, and it all depends on how the bone heals. The Cowboys have a Week 9 bye, by the way, so it sounds like they want to have Prescott back before then. The Cowboys, meanwhile, don't actually have a backup quarterback on their 53-man roster. They promoted Cooper Rush from the practice squad prior to Week 1. Rush will ostensibly be the starter for the time being, but he'll also be throwing to a riffraff receiving group behind a riffraff offensive line, a line that also suffered a loss, with left guard Connor McGovern going down with a high ankle sprain. The left side of the Cowboys' offensive line will be a sieve until 40-year-old vet Jason Peters gets into shape on the practice squad. But the fact that a 40-year-old Peters is expected to be their lifeline tells you all you need to know. Elsewhere, one of the reasons we really liked CeeDee Lamb for fantasy this year was a legitimate belief that he could lead the NFL in targets. And indeed, he got 11 of them in Week 1. Tying him for 11th among all players with such studs as Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's really good. But he also caught just 2 of those 11 for 29 yards. That's really bad. Lamb clearly looked frustrated, and we don't blame him. But the Cowboys also seem to be putting some of the blame on Lamb. Cowboys CEO Stephen Jones said on Monday that, quote, CeeDee has got to improve and work his way into being the number 1 receiver. We think he can. They probably should have figured that out before trading Amari Cooper. But I digress. Starting at running back today isn't the 49ers' Elijah Mitchell. It didn't take long for Mitchell to pick up yet another injury after an injury-riddled rookie campaign and after missing most of August with a hamstring injury. He left in the second quarter of Week 1 with a knee injury, and per ESPN's Adam Schefter, it's an MCL sprain that is expected to sideline him for about 2 months. Veteran Jeff Wilson took over as the full-time back after Mitchell left the lineup, posting an ugly 9 for 22 rushing line while catching both of his targets for 8 yards. Of course, that was, like the sloppiest game of all time, given it was played in a monsoon. It's also notable that the 49ers game day number 3 back was rookie Jordan Mason, a UDFA. Now, Mason didn't register a single offensive snap, even with Mitchell going down. So Tyrion Davis-Price, who was their 3rd-round pick in April, could get into the mix moving forward after being a healthy scratch in Week 1. Now, it is indeed curious that the 49ers have spent back-to-back 3rd-round picks on running backs, only to have them both inactive in Week 1 of their respective rookie campaigns. Thinking of Trey Sermon last year. But it's also likely that Mason was active in Week 1 simply because of special teams alone. Kyle Shanahan said as much. Davis-Price doesn't play special teams. Now, Mitchell owners should prioritize Wilson this week on the waiver wire, but they should also consider Tyrion Davis-Price, who's very talented, if they miss out on Wilson. Now, our other running back spot might actually have some good news in it. The Steelers' Najee Harris got twisted up awkwardly on a late 4th quarter carry in Pittsburgh's season-opening victory against the Bengals, and it certainly didn't look good. But it's possible he dodged something major. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, tests on Harris's foot injury, quote, came back negative, and there was a belief that, according to a source, he should be good to go versus the Patriots this coming Sunday. Now, I am a little bit skeptical of that timeline. Harris previously dealt with a Lisfranc sprain in training camp that sidelined him for a number of weeks, and the injury suffered in week 1 was to the same foot. Now, our Dr. Edwin Porras considers Najee very volatile this season because of that injury and potentially this re-aggravation. Now, meanwhile, Pittsburgh's offensive line continues to be a major problem. Harris had just 26 yards on 12 touches in the season opener. His fantasy day was saved by a touchdown. And backup Jaylen Warren had 7 yards on 3 touches. He didn't fare any better. Also, quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, as the kids say, ain't it. If you have Najee on your squad and are looking for insurance, the undrafted rookie Warren out of Oklahoma State is the best bet. He played every snap after Harris left the lineup, and Coach Mike Tomlin typically employs a bell cow back. But that's no guarantee for Warren given his inexperience. It is possible that Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland mix in behind him. Behind this offensive line, I'm not overly optimistic for anyone but Najee Harris here. In our first wide receiver spot, we have Julio Jones because Chris Godwin got hurt. Now, Godwin played just 19 snaps in his week 1 return from a December ACL tear before a hamstring injury ruled him out for the rest of the game. The good news is that the injury isn't to Godwin's surgically repaired knee or even to the same leg. The bad news is that this was preventable. Our Dr. Edwin Porras wrote that the injury can almost certainly be attributed to his 8-month timeline and lack of ramp-up / acclimatization before playing in live NFL action. The exact concern almost every injury doc in the fantasy industry had heading into Sunday. Godwin had not even reached the point of taking contact in practice despite being a full practice twice last week. The hope is that the Bucs shut him down for another several weeks and allow him to get right, Edwin writes. Now, that is the case, apparently. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero said Godwin will be down, quote, a few weeks with the injury, which obviously makes sense because rushing him back from 2 injuries would be infinitely worse than what they've already done. Fantasy players should not expect to have Godwin, in my mind, until October. Meanwhile, the Bucs might have made a savvy move, bringing in future Hall of Famer Julio Jones. Julio looked dusty in his lone season with the Titans in 2021, but that wasn't the case in week 1 with the Bucs. Julio didn't have a huge game, but he certainly looked good. He posted 3 for 69 receiving on 5 targets and had 2 of 17 rushing as the Bucs used him in a part-time role, playing him 52% of the offensive snaps. But the role was potentially a great one for Julio. On Sunday morning, before the games, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reported that the Bucs clocked Julio as their fastest player in training camp. And then in week 1, per Next Gen Stats, he was the 7th fastest ball carrier in the entire NFL. Now, we're not sure Julio will ever approach the dominant asset he was in his prime. But with Godwin down for a few weeks with a hamstring injury, it's possible the Bucs may need to use him more in the interim. He's certainly on the wide receiver 3 radar. Now, at our other wide receiver spot is the Chargers' Keenan Allen. In week 1, Allen was on his way to having a huge day for fantasy. He had 4 for 66 receiving, but it was cut short due to a hamstring injury that he sustained in the first half, and he did not return. The Chargers have a short week coming up with a Thursday night football clash against the Chiefs next, so there's an extremely low chance Allen is able to suit up in week 2. He didn't practice or wouldn't have practiced on the estimated practice report on Monday. We would say that this is a boost to Mike Williams, but Williams was a ghost on Sunday, even with Allen out for much of the game. Now, Williams is a notoriously streaky player, though, and the Chargers will desperately need him to have a big game against the Chiefs. Now, in Allen's absence, Josh Palmer played 75% of the snaps in week 1. And though he caught just 3 passes for 5 yards, keep in mind that the lone game that Allen missed in 2021, Palmer filled his slot role beautifully. Against the Giants in a 37-21 win, Palmer posted 5 for 66 receiving with a touchdown on 7 targets while playing 87% of the offensive snaps. That's the game that Keenan Allen missed last year. I'd consider Palmer a strong wide receiver 3 against the Chiefs on Thursday night. Now, I acknowledge that DeAndre Carter had the touchdown and seemed to have a bigger role than Josh Palmer did in week 1, but he played about half the snaps Palmer did. So Palmer is the better bet. In our flex spot, mea culpa, we have to talk Jaguars backfield. Now, I talked on this very program that I was skeptical about the Jaguars' James Robinson, and it was backed up by medical data. Running backs have a sad track record coming back from Achilles injuries, but Robinson is looking to buck the trend this season. And he got off to a promising start in the season opener. J-Rob posted 11 carries for 66 yards and a touchdown rushing, and he added a 3-yard touchdown reception on 2 targets for 19.9 fantasy points against the Commanders. Now, he also split snaps essentially right down the middle with Travis Etienne, holding a slight advantage playing 36 to Etienne's 34. Now, we're not ready to say that Robinson is all the way back from his injury after one performance, but he easily beat the low expectations I had for him in the season opener. Now, Robinson looked locked in as the team's lead runner, while Etienne is going to handle most of the passing situations. As for Etienne, he too could have had a huge 2-touchdown performance in week 1. While he managed a solid 65 yards from scrimmage on just 6 touches, he nearly had 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence missed him for a 15-yard touchdown on the team's opening drive before Etienne dropped a 3-yard score in the flat in the second quarter. The points will come for Etienne, but as long as these two are splitting the workload, neither can be considered more than a low-end RB2 until proven otherwise. I'm Joe Dolan, and this has been the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. It will air every Tuesday through Friday this NFL season. Remember to like this video. Just, hit the thumbs up down there at the bottom. And subscribe to the Fantasy Points channel for the daily lineup and all our videos. We really hope you enjoyed Wes Huber's Monday grades yesterday. Now, if you liked our live streams with all of our analysis, we're talking the point spread, cashing points, the final points that were all on YouTube. Those are going to be paywalled this coming week at fantasypoints.com and going forward. And as the injuries from week 1 remind you, your fantasy roster is never complete. At fantasypoints.com, our mission is to help you score more fantasy points with our industry-leading articles, tools, projections, and the aforementioned live streams. If you're looking for the best waiver, trade, and start-sit advice, our standard package is going to cover you. But if you're a DFS nut or like making prop and against the spread bets, our premium package is the one you need. Both packages give you access to our subscriber Discord with a direct line to our staff. Whatever you choose, use code LINEUP2022. Use code LINEUP22. LINEUP22 is the code for an extra 10% off any package. I'll see you tomorrow, folks.